Hello, everyone, and welcome to Capes, Cowls, and Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm your host, Jake Hart. I'm a podcaster, a sound designer, a messiah, a prophet, and a god to all of you. And today I'm joined by my fellow disciples.
Hi, it's Tom Gapper here, your comic book shogun and the one true god. I will not have this. I will not. You miss 1 week, Jake, and you come back with a bigger ego than ever. I will not stand for this. I'm the one true god, and we have another co-host as well,
Dave. When you start the world anew, all you need is a Dave.
He is the greatest amongst us.
It is true.
It is known.
Dave. So this is our weekly news show, breaking down and discussing all the biggest stories that have hit the webs. And as always, we're going to have our pull list at the end of the show. But before we get into all of that, how are you guys? Dave, how are you with moving? It's slowly coming together, I can see. You weren't with us last week.
Oh, yeah, I'm just so tired. Like, it's been a busy time. I'm going away soon, so that means that there's, like, a lot more work on. And, yeah, I decided yesterday, after a long day in work, it was a good idea to put my desk together, which was, like, a bad idea for, like, my body today when I was working. I was like, oh, 'cause this desk requires you to kind of, like, assemble it, you know, with screws and metal and kind of on its side. And you have to, like, lift it all up. But just as well I did, because now I can use it for this podcast.
How about you, Tom? What have you been up to?
I have been just recovering from a terrible bout of flu. I'm coming off the tail of that end of it now.
A cold, Tom. Have you been in bed? Have you been bedridden?
I have been bedridden.
Could you get out of bed? Could you walk?
Why are you...
Well, I don't know. I was having this conversation today, and
are you my doctor?
Somebody was like, "Oh, I'm having my flu shot," and all this. I was like, "I've never had the flu." He was like, "Yeah, a lot of people say they've had the flu, but the flu is really bad." And I was like,
"It's like you missed the 1 week we talk about Doctor Who. Now you come in here acting like a doctor. This is shameful behaviour." But yeah, no, it's been good. I've been catching up. I've been rewatching The Wire, as everyone on my Twitter will know, because I'm obsessed with that show. And I kind of wanted to do it anyway, and then obviously Michael K. Williams passed away, so I felt the time was right. I've been loving it so far. As a result, I have not been reading many comic books. I should really get back on that, but between illness and watching The Wire, just not had the time. Unlike Dave, I made sure the flat I got was furnished, so I haven't had to put any desks together. I went in the room, there was a desk there, there was a bed there, cupboards. It was great, man. Great.
even if it was furnished, I'd probably still be there, like, organizing Blu-rays and pieces of furniture that I just wanted myself, which, like, this is not good enough.
I was about to say, I'd see that furniture and be like, this has got to go. I've got to have my stuff in here.
I'm a simple man with simple tastes.
Just making your way through the galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got my TV, I've got my Xbox, I've got my PC, I've got all my comic books. So I'm pretty happy. That's all I need, really. That's
all you need in life, Tom. I think if people followed suit like you, they would be a lot happier as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty zen.
I have been reading. My Dune read-through continues. I'm on Chapter House Dune, the final novel by Frank Herbert, and I'm very skeptical about going into the last two books because they were written by his son, which are all the books by his son are very controversial, you could say, amongst the Dune fandom. So half the people hate it and say it's not canon, and the other half are like, yeah, it's all right. So we'll see when we go into that. But I have been watching stuff. Finally, everything's moved in. I finally found some time to watch some stuff. So I went to the cinema and saw No Time to Die. That was a blast. Seeing that in the cinema is definitely worth the wait and touches on a story we will get into a bit later. But I did manage to catch the last episode of What If, where, What If Ultron won. And next week, guys, we're going to be doing a full spoiler review of the whole series. But I got to say, guys, that last episode, Dave, I don't know how caught up you are. My God, that was definitely, for me anyway, the best episode yet. Just cape shit at its finest. It was so good. I know you as well enjoyed it, Tom.
It was literally just like they pulled some shit out of the comics. I mean, obviously won't go into it too much now, but what an episode. It had me completely on the edge of my seat the entire time. Just every time I thought it can't blow my mind anymore, it was like, my mind just got blown again. Crazy stuff, and I can't wait for the finale this week.
Yeah, same. And I've also managed to catch the first 4 episodes of Why the Last Man. Tom, have you managed to catch any yet?
My friend put on like the first episode half an hour before we started recording, so I was just kind of sat there like, you piece of shit. As soon as like this podcast is done, I'm going to just be like, all right, try guys, and then I'm going down. I'm going to watch the rest of the episode and maybe binge the rest as well.
It's bingeable. I watched all 4 of them not in like one sitting, but within a day. So it's definitely a bingeable show. I'm enjoying it, man. I will say, Tom, because you've read the comics, it's very different to the comics in a lot of ways.
I figured they might be going in a sort of different direction to the comics, but
it is a very different direction, but still keeping to like the core of what the story's trying to say, but it's adding a lot of extra depth and themes to it, and I'm really liking it. It's really well made. It's funny though that the only criticism I have is that, so the premise, this is not spoiler, the premise is obviously everything with a Y chromosome has passed away due to some sort of virus, except for one guy called Yorick and his pet monkey. So, it's a show full of women, but the whole sort of premise of the show is this guy is so special. What's so special about him? He's the key to all of this, but yet he's the least interesting character of the whole show, I'll say. Like, all the other like female characters and their storylines are so much more interesting. So when we're going away from them and back to him, who's technically the lead character, I'm a bit like, no, which doesn't bode well for your show if your lead character is the least interesting. So that's only my little criticism. Well,
yeah, no,
a bit of a criticism.
I kind of see where you're coming from, because there's been a number of shows. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's definitely been shows I've watched where it's been a similar effect, where just like it cuts to the main guy, and I'm just like, you know what? To a degree, when I first like watched through the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that's kind of how I felt towards Frodo. Every time it cut to Frodo, I'd just be like, well, no, because I want more of the stuff with Aragorn and Legolas, and like I want to see what like Pippin and Merry are up to. I want to see all this other stuff. Now I love it just as much as everything else, but yeah, it doesn't really bode well when your lead character is the least interesting part of your show. So hopefully, I mean, maybe I'll watch it and maybe I'll think differently to you. Maybe it's a subjective thing, but equally they could just later on in the season he'll get some more interesting plot threads and maybe that'll help. But I can't wait to watch the rest of it, basically, after the first 20-30 minutes I just saw.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, that's it then. So let's go into the news.
Tear up page 1. Run that photo instead.
Headline?
Spider-Man, hero or menace? Exclusive Daily Bugle photo.
Okay, so our first story then. This is a story that we've discussed before. It's been going on for a couple of weeks now, and that is that Disney and Scarlett Johansson have settled their lawsuit. So after 2 months, Scarlett Johansson and Disney have been debating over the release strategy for the latest MCU film Black Widow. So while the terms of this settlement have not been disclosed, there are some rumors about how much she's got paid. It appears that both of them have recognized that their strength when they work together is much better than being against each other, and both of them have made statements that bode well for their professional relationship. So Scarlett Johansson had this to say: I am happy to have resolved our differences with Disney. I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done together over the years and have greatly enjoyed my creative relationship with the team. I look forward to continuing our collaboration in years to come. And then Alan Bergman, the Disney chairman, said, I'm very pleased that we have been able to come to a mutual agreement with Scarlett Johansson regarding Black Widow. We appreciate her contributions to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and look forward to working together on a number of upcoming projects, including Disney's Tower of Terror. So, Dave, I go to you first about this. What do you make of all this? Do you think this is good that they've, shaken hands? People have been paid, whoever needs to be paid, and they're going to continue working together in the future? Or do you think there's something else behind this? Could there be does this sort of put a little damper on Disney's reputation?
Sounds a bit sinister to like, is there something else behind this? Is there an evil plot of some sort? No, I think it was the right decision on Disney's part. I don't see it as like, oh yeah, this is great. I think it's something that maybe shouldn't have happened in the first place. I was definitely on Scarlett Johansson's side in this whole scenario, and yeah, I think that there's been a lot of realizations by movie studio execs and studios in general. I'm just not very happy with, a lot of the state of the industry at the moment anyway. And I think that obviously we have a lot of news that we're talking about and a lot of things that are happening, which is good news and pointing us in the right direction. But as I mentioned before, I still have my worries over the way that they're working things and trying all these different experiments. And I think the studios are taking advantage a bit. When you look at something like streaming, which is very much untested in terms of like measurement of success and how they pay talent. You look at something like Star Trek, the original series, or you look at shows in which people, or even like characters in which they say, you are using my likeness, so you are profiting off that, therefore I will get money for that for the rest of my life. That's not really happening anymore, and I think that it is fair game for those actors and actresses to start saying that they want a cut of that, because, if a character is then going to be used, like, Mary Poppins, for example, for the lifetime of that character, then every time you see Mary Poppins, it's going to look like the Julie Andrews version, so she would have a claim over that part of the character. So I think it's going to be the same when you're dealing with characters like Black Widow or Captain Marvel, numerous streaming shows, etc. When all of this is happening, if talent just gets paid and then never sees a dime of it afterwards, then it's not really a good incentive, and it also just is greed on the studio's part, especially when you look at things like sitcoms as well, which have also had the fact that, say, members of Friends or Big Bang Theory can live out the rest of their days without doing any other work, just because they can just reap the benefits of the money that comes off syndication from shows being showed again. So all of this kind of is a step in the right direction for how streaming giants can't just go like, oh, well, we can change the rule book now. And I think that this shows the studios, one, are realizing that they can't get away with it, and two, the talent is realizing, oh, hang on, you're like stealing thousands and thousands of pounds of us. And something quickly I want to say as well is, when this did first come out, I think it was really shoddy of Disney, because a lot of people did jump on board that train of thought of going, oh, we think it's really disrespectful that Scarlett Johansson has done this during a pandemic in which we were like forced to do this and stuff. And a lot of people did go on board with that narrative because they were like, yeah, they're right. What a, bitch, of Scarlett Johansson to be there doing that during a pandemic. How dare she, and all this. And that was purely constructed by their PR team and stuff, which I think was quite disgusting, to be honest. So I think I'm glad that they've done this to kind of almost go, you know what, actually maybe we were wrong, and it's not worth fighting this, because it's not going to go away, as soon as, even if you didn't give Scarlett Johansson her money, well, what's going to happen to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Emma Stone, all these other people in the future, which then will make projects with you. You put on your streaming service and go, you'll never see another bit of that money ever again, which talent is just not going to do. We've seen again with Christopher Nolan. He's literally gone, I will not work with this studio again after they've burned so many directors with Warner Brothers. And the CEO has actually said, we made a mistake. I shouldn't have been so hasty to put everything onto HBO Max. So don't burn your bridges, and I suppose it's good for them because they know that they're going to make Tower of Terror with Scarlett Johansson, which I think a lot of people are happy with. So yeah, definitely the right decision. You didn't want to be dragging this out. I don't think anybody wanted to see this whole legal battle stretched out. And yeah, I hope Disney has realized the mistakes they made.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the guy from Warner Brothers as well, because I was going to mention that I think the main problem with all these studios and this streaming thing is that it's just been very reactionary to, obviously, the pandemic, as well as other things that have been happening around the world. And it seems like the investors are like, well, what are you going to do about these films? And they're like, we'll put it here. You know what I mean? And they've just very reacted and say, we have to do this. Let's do it now. Let's get it in the books. And not really thinking about the talent behind it first. You know what I mean? Warner Brothers, a lot of directors came out and were like, what the hell? And then we've seen it with Disney. And then Disney doesn't also have a good track record with the projects they've put on Disney Plus, all of them being led by females. And then I think it's also interesting that, because you also mentioned Dwayne Johnson, Dave, that he seemed pretty cool with it, and that's because he had a prearranged deal with Disney when they decided that this was going to go on Disney Plus. So he got a little bit of money beforehand. So I find it interesting that Scarlett Johansson sued Disney and Emma Stone sued Disney, but Emily Blunt was another one. Now, how come Dwayne Johnson got paid before the hand, but Emily Blunt ended up suing Disney as well? So that's concerning there. So I do think it's good that they've shaken hands and moving on, but I do think people need to be careful. And with these big corporations now, they need to be careful with how they treat their talent, because a lot of talent now is looking at these big corporations and going, you know what, maybe I don't want to work with you anymore because of X, Y, and Z. And then that's not going to bode well for them in the future. But like I said, I'm glad they're shaking hands and they're moving on between this. Let's just get this out of the way now. We're going to talk about things later about how the pandemic is moving away from all this and cinemas are coming back. But Tom, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to see that obviously they've settled their differences in quite a good way. The fact that they're still willing to work together afterwards, I think that is a good sign that Scarlett probably did get her dues. I know we don't have official figures on what she got, but yeah, it's good news overall, especially as you guys said, Disney definitely mishandled it at the start by basically coming out and attacking Scarlett Johansson's character, blaming it all on the pandemic, trying to make her out to be this bad person for doing this. But I think it kind of also links back to something I said last week when we were talking about, obviously, the Ditko estate suing Marvel, and then them counter-suing straight away. It just seems to be just this weird tactic that Disney and Marvel have, where just they initially go massively on the defensive or even on the attack, but then it just always ends up being quite an amicable split. So just part of me is wondering if, even though it was still handled poorly and shouldn't have been done, that was just their way of just going right, our bottom line is we don't think we should have to pay you anything. So then when they actually do pay out, it makes it look okay, makes it look a bit better in that way. I don't know. But hopefully it will set a good precedent for the future. The stars are going to get paid for their work fairly. Because again, it does touch on what I was saying last week, that just if you're not paying the artist fairly, then the artist will find work elsewhere. And this will happen in comics, this will happen in movies and TVs. People don't want to keep working for Marvel Studios because of all this stuff. They'll start doing films with A24, or they'll go over to other studios and just do other things. So yeah, I think it's promising, at least, that this has ended so swiftly and so amicably. Gives me hope that maybe the whole thing with the Ditko estate can also be solved quickly and amicably, and that's fair to all parties. Just because I think Disney kind of needs to, just to control the damage, because they have had some damage from this. I mean, the Ditko estate doesn't really affect Disney in a way, but people are lumping it together with them. I have noticed over Facebook, so people who aren't looking at it fully, they just lumping the two together. So Disney have taken a hit on that. They did take a hit on the Johansson thing, so hopefully they can just start earning back some trust, and maybe hopefully people will focus more on the good side of it, the fact that they are doing a lot more for diversity now, even though it has taken them a while. And yeah, just hopefully we'll see a bit more fairness and equality all around there, and we'll have less bad Disney/Marvel stories. Because we rarely do anyway. It's never nice when we have to badmouth them, but sometimes we have to.
I was going to say, not just those two, and not as serious as those two, but also the Simu Liu incident as well. That wasn't great for Disney either. So, Dave, what's our next story then?
So, sticking with Marvel, Sam Raimi has got candid on why he made Doctor Strange 2 after the awful reaction to Spider-Man 3. So Raimi spoke frankly about the mental challenges faced when considering a return to Marvel filmmaking and why those challenges ultimately motivated him. He's been quoted as saying, "Bitch, really? Did you want me to..." No, I'm joking. After all the flack I got, you want me to come back? How dare you? No.
Do you know how much I sacrificed?
Exactly. So he says that I didn't know that I could face it again because it was so awful having been the director of Spider-Man 3. The internet was getting revved up and people disliked that movie and they sure let me know about it. So it was difficult to take back on. But then I found out that there was an opening on Doctor Strange 2. My agent called me and said they're looking for a director and my name had come up. So he asked me if I was interested. I thought, I wonder if I could still do it. And he knows that those films are really demanding. But that is ultimately why he felt that it was reason enough that he should go back. And he's always liked the character of Doctor Strange. He was not his favorite, but I think it's pretty obvious that Spider-Man was. He was right up there with his favorites, however. He loved the first movie. He thought that Scott Derrickson did a wonderful job. And yeah, he felt that the character is in a good place. So he didn't think that... So he's quoted as saying, "I didn't think I would be doing another superhero movie. It just happened." Then he sort of goes on to talk about the improvisation that has been going on set, and a lot of the love he has for, like, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch and the visuals and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, some really interesting ideas and sort of notions come up here because we're dealing with a kind of legacy director which has been from the beginning of, you know, the superhero resurgence of movies, really, you know, and that was what was interesting about him doing Multiverse of Madness. And we're now hearing about a director who's faced the backlash as well of fans, which, yeah, Spider-Man 3 was one of those first movies. As he says, the internet was just getting started up, and yeah, people really have since gone hard on that film. I'm like a Spider-Man 3 apologist, obviously, you know, being a fan of the original trilogy. I by no means think it is like an amazing movie, you know, it's obviously got its problems, but yeah, I do feel for Raimi when he is saying about like all the flack that he got, which ultimately put him off making Spider-Man 4, and, you know, he may have came back to Marvel sooner had that not happened. So yeah, think about how you act on the internet. But yeah, so what do you guys think of this? How are you feeling towards Multiverse of Madness after hearing this? Obviously, there's also been talks of like reshoots and that kind of stuff and test audiences. It's clear that obviously he was a fan of what Derrickson did. He's not going to sort of like change the formula and change it up completely. But I think we know the type of filmmaker he is, that there will be something which is more ambitious and more bold. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's always sad to hear actors or directors when they talk about the sort of negative side of fan interactions, because people did go in quite hard on Spider-Man 3. I'll admit that I've said some harsh things about it in the past. Don't think I have on the internet, though, mainly just like when talking about the film with people. But you do get people who seem to go out of their way to let people know that they didn't like how they did X film or Y film. So I can imagine that that's like pretty disheartening, especially after his first two films received so much love and adoration. So I can totally get why that would have put him off making Spider-Man 4 or making superhero films in general. But it is good to have him back. And as soon as I heard that he was tapped for Doctor Strange 2, I was like, okay, that is like an inspired choice. And I'm really excited to see what he'll do with the film. I think, like Dave said, he'll probably try and keep it... He probably won't try and change Scott Derrickson's formula too much, just to make sure the film is like in line with all that. But I can also see him adding his own spin to it. And I'm looking forward for the inevitable Bruce Campbell cameo. That's got to happen, surely. And yeah, just hearing about like how he's enjoying his time on the set and... about the allowance for improvisation there, it paints a picture of a film that's going to be really, really quite fun to watch, and I think you'll be able to tell from it like how fun it was to make. Obviously, like that's just like speculation until we actually see some footage for the damn thing. But yeah, I'm tentatively excited, happy to have Raimi back, and hopefully it'll be a better experience for him this time around.
All I'm thinking about now is what that Bruce Campbell cameo could be, and I kind of want it to be like...
It's either going to be Ash or a multiversal Mysterio. It has to be one of the two, or both.
No, considering he's done Spider-Man, and the fact that we're getting, whatever, Far From Home, but essentially a Spider-Verse film, you could have the opportunity to bring in like his, a character from the Raimi film. So maybe like a character is like going to go through some sort of portal, and like he's just there like tie, shoes, and then they go through. Like, can I help you? So,
well, that's the thing, because like the original plan was like Bruce Campbell had cameos in all three of the Spider-Man films because Raimi wanted to bring him in as Mysterio in Spider-Man 4. So, like, bring him in as a multiversal Mysterio. It would be so funny. But then have him come in as Ash and kill that Mysterio. And then that'll be the greatest... That would be the greatest scene in cinematic history.
Definitely what Marvel would have put to screen, I can tell you.
Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, like, I don't know if he's been on the internet lately, but if he thought they were bad in 2007, oh boy... For his sake, I hope he doesn't make a bad film, because the internet is a lot worse now.
Well, to be fair, he did say the internet was getting revved up, so I think he probably knows that it was like quite...
Yes, it's an interesting place now, the internet. But no, other than that, I'm glad that he was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to take the leap and try this. Get back in the game, you could say. And the fact that he does seem to have a love for this character. I will say, though, I think he's doing something different to Scott Derrickson. Otherwise, Scott Derrickson would be doing the movie, because we initially heard that he had left on, the classic creative differences. So obviously there was something that between him and Marvel and the direction they wanted to take this film, they weren't seeing eye to eye. So the way I look at it is that Marvel approached, they said, we're looking for a director. Raimi put his name in the hat and was like, hey, what have you got? They presented him what they wanted to do, and then he was like, cool, I can gel with that, and then just add his style and flair to what the MCU already has planned. But because the MCU is such a machine now that, it is unfortunate to say, because you can just get a director and put them in whatever film you want them to do, but at the same time, you want to find the right director for that project, because they bring a certain style and flair to what you see that film becoming. But with this one, I feel as if the differences between Marvel Studios and Scott Derrickson is why I think he's going to be doing something completely different to what we saw in the first film. Still keeping that tone of Doctor Strange, because the same tone of Doctor Strange is consistent even throughout the Avengers films of who he is. Apart from that No Way Home trailer, but we'll see what happens there in December. I still think we'll have the Doctor Strange that we know. I just think this film's going to be very different, but I'm still very excited for it. I'm more excited for this than I am for No Way Home. Just the prospect of Wanda obviously coming into the fold as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I like the he's talking about the improvisation on set and stuff like that, because he goes on to say that these are really big productions and there's so much money going on. The fact that they can take the moment to go, why don't we just press pause here, play about with it, don't worry about the schedule and stuff like that. Let's see if we can come up with something better. That just goes to the core of filmmaking, I think. So, and even when you have this big project that they still manage to find the time to do that, it's really nice to hear. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on the matter.
No, I would say I would disagree in that I think that directors, etc., like just come in and sort of fill that space, because I think Marvel has said before that they kind of will do it as a kind of like pitch us the idea, what do you think this film should be. I think that's true maybe in the case of something like Ant-Man or Thor and the Dark World, but those were projects that were pitched and worked on and then left for creative grounds. So you might be right in the sense that like this idea is already formulated, and then they've disagreed with Scott Derrickson about the trajectory, and then they've brought in somebody who will see that through. But I don't think we would have ever had something like Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, all of these films if it wasn't for the pitching and the ideas of the directors. I think I think what most people think of when it's like, oh, all the Marvel films are the same. I think it's more like visually wise, the fact that they're all shot digitally, the VFX all looks the same, very similar, like the cinematography, a lot of like the same jokes and stuff through the writing, but ultimately like the actual story and the ideas, I think, still come a lot from the directors. The fact that they are pitched like these films, like Captain Marvel was like pitched to them, the idea of Captain Marvel was pitched to them by those directors out of different pitches for those films, and that's why they went with the two directors they did. So whereas I think obviously ones like Ant-Man, as I mentioned, Thor the Dark World, those had like Patty Jenkins was on Thor and Edgar Wright was on Ant-Man, so I think that those were quite different in that somebody else was coming in to fill those shoes. But as you said, I can't see that Raimi would be that type of director. But what I think was the contentious part was potentially that Scott Derrickson, I imagine, wanted to make a Doctor Strange 2, and I think the Marvel wanted to make a Multiverse of Madness film. I think that that's maybe where they clashed, and Sam Raimi could go in and go, hey, isn't this fun? I've been in the Marvel universe of some form before, so I can come and have fun with this multiverse stuff and this cinematic universe and show alternate versions of things and like put some of my horror stuff in there, maybe put a bit of my Spider-Man stuff in there just for a bit of fun. So he would have fun with that, whereas probably Derrickson was not interested in that. Probably the same reason, Edgar Wright left Ant-Man. He was like, I'm not interested in having this like S.H.I.E.L.D., MCU stuff come into it. He just wanted to tell an Ant-Man film. So that probably was like the contentious part, I imagine. But yeah, as far as the, I do feel for the guy, like I said before, with the Spider-Man 3 stuff. I think, to me, that has always seemed like studio meddling at its very worst. Very much like he's always said he had no interest in Venom. He didn't want to put Venom in the film. They forced him to put Venom in the film. Obviously, we knew like with Spider-Man 4, he was planning to do like Lizard, etc. As Tom said, there were characters that he was building up in those films that you would have seen later. So I think it's understandable that he was like burned from a lot of that kind of stuff. And yeah, which is unfortunate because it's the same sort of stuff you get with Star Wars. It's just people of like, oh, he did a goofy dance. It's like, well, how does that like define the entire film?
We'll see, I guess. I mean, that's going to be coming out very soon, March next year. Very excited. What have we got next then, Tom?
Oh, what have we got next? So the first House of the Dragon trailer has dropped. That's for the new Game of Thrones prequel series that's coming from HBO. And it's revealed a new Iron Throne design as well. So it's based on the George R.R. Martin books. House of Dragon will take you back 200 years into the past to a time when Daenerys' ancestors of House Targaryen ruled Westeros. However, there is conflict brewing within the house that leads up to a civil war, which would later be known as the Dance of Dragons. So the little teaser trailer we got, there's a lot of white hair in there. A lot of white hair. Briefly, you get to see Matt Smith. I'm pretty sure that's Matt Smith's character talking in the trailer.
That is him narrating, yeah.
Yeah, the speakers on my phone went great, so I wasn't 100% sure. But I think it looks promising enough. I mean, nothing that like immediately made me go, oh, hello, I need to watch this. But I'm in it just for some Targaryen madness. The Dance of Dragons, that Civil War, there's a whole lot of story in there that I'd be excited to see on the screen. Yeah, just I'm tentatively excited, but I think as far as teaser trailers go, maybe not the most wowing. But I'm definitely interested to see where the series goes. What do you guys make of it, Dave? I saw your tweet earlier simply saying meh, so I'll go to you first. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, first of all, wowing is definitely the phrase used when talking about Owen Wilson in sofa adverts. Wow.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'd be lying if, again, I saw elements of this and was like kind of excited and was like, taken aback by some of the scale and just getting into, aside from cape shit, there's your fantasy shit, it's that kind of, ooh, dragons. And I think there was that shot where it was like two knights fighting and it looked like proper medieval, the kind of stuff you used to get when you were a kid, like, the ridiculous looking, helmets which are like shaped like birds and dragons and that kind of stuff.
Big feathers on them.
Yeah, so that I saw and was like, okay, I am getting excited. This is cool. But I'm still just... It's like when they announced this, it was like, okay, that just seems like a very predictable avenue for them to go down to carry on Game of Thrones in some shape or form. And then you hear things like Matt Smith cast, and you're like, oh, okay. And you see like set photos of it, and you're just like, okay, it's just Matt Smith in like a blonde wig, you know, so what? It's just... And I think it's just that this teaser then just kind of replicated those same feelings to me. There was nothing in there which I was like, oh, wow, you know, there was nothing like new. There was nothing unexpected at all. There was nothing really original. There was nothing to me that said like, oh my God, you need to watch this, apart from the fact that it's just Game of Thrones. And I think that they are underestimating how burned people felt by that finale. Because, you know, again, I don't know if we've ever really spoke about it on the show, but, you know, I still... so bitter about that end series. You know, I know some people are just like, oh yeah, he had a rough like last 2 seasons, but like no, like it was a bit rough when we were watching it, but like after I watched it, I was just so mad, and I'm still like not over it, and I'm like really angry, and then I see it and I'm like, you know what, when it was coming out, when the show came out, I thought like there's no way you can like mess this up. They've done so well for so many seasons, and they did. And I just think when a channel or, you know, studio drops the ball that much, I just don't know if you can go back as quickly. Maybe I just have, that is a theme within my life, you know, similar to, you know, we're talking about Spider-Man 3, you know, they kind of drop the ball there and then they immediately go and reboot Spider-Man like only like 2-3 years later. And it's just, you know, I think other studios and film companies have sometimes gone, let's just stay away from that for a while. And I think in some ways they would have been better doing that, because the only thing, like I said, I'll give this credit for is that I saw some of the fantasy stuff, thought it looked cool. Some of the designs, wasn't overly impressed by the chair, actually. I thought it was cool that I saw it and thought, oh, that looks like the book. But I just kind of thought it looked like what it was in the show, and they've just stuck on some more, like super glued some more swords on the end. So I was a bit like, so it seemed a bit fan servicey in that sense. But the designs looked cool. The sets looked awesome. The designs looked good. And I also liked the fact that you had the diversity in there, in which you had like dark-skinned actors who still had like this sort of typical white hair and stuff. Because I know when that casting was announced, there was a lot of arseholes on the internet being like, this doesn't make sense. It's like, it's in a fantasy world. Go fuck yourselves. So when you see them in this trailer, you're kind of like, that look, you know, they look awesome. They look epic. They look like they deserved, you know, they belong in that world. And in some ways, you know, that kind of made it a bit more like, ooh, you know, who are these? You know, like, are they a different faction? It made it a bit more intriguing as to, because it's, you know, even in Game of Thrones, we didn't really get too many characters of color either. So that maybe would have been something nice to play up a bit bigger. But apart from that and the designs, I was still, like I said on Twitter, a bit meh about the entire thing.
Oh, strong words. Well, I said meh's not really a strong word. But words from Dave there. Jake, what do you think? And are you as equally burnt as me and Dave are from the ending of Game of Thrones?
I am, and I really don't know how to follow Dave, because I feel as if he perfectly encapsulated how I felt about this teaser as well, where I was watching it and I was going, sure, like the fantasy stuff looks epic. I'm always down for knights fighting and dragons and all of that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I was like, this just feels like another season of Game of Thrones. Like it feels and looks exactly the same. And I felt as if you're going to do a spin-off show, at least make it look a bit different from what you've previously done, considering how burnt people are. And yes, I am one of those people that was extremely burnt. Not so much by season 7, but season 8, definitely. I was just like, what the hell what are you doing here? And I was giving this show the benefit of the doubt because, first of all, they did announce it before season 8, this show. So it was already in development. So they thought that Game of Thrones was going to be, you know, it's going to keep the hype going and everyone's going to be into all this sort of stuff. And I don't think they were expecting that response from season 8. So they thought, well, we're so in development now, we just have to go with it. So I'll be really interested to see how this show does with the fandom and in pop culture in general, because I'm going to watch it because I always watch something that's fantasy based, but I'm really curious if the greater fandom are like, Game of Thrones, nah, I can't be bothered with that stuff. And then they do one season or two and then they're like, nah, like it's not working. The Game of Thrones is not at the level where we want it to be anymore because they were so burnt by those last 2 seasons. Because
and we've got Lord of the Rings and The Witcher on the cards now as well.
That's what I mean. I feel as if they're
Wheel
just
of Time.
Yes, and Wheel of Time. Yes, Tom. I feel as if they just looked at it and go, oh my God, Lord of the Rings is coming, The Witcher's out, that was really popular. We need to be out there to compete. We don't want Game of Thrones to be forgotten about. And from everything I've seen so far, it's not like that single image of the Lord of the Rings series had me more excited about it than this whole sort of teaser. So that says a lot in itself. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, I'm not the biggest Game of Thrones fans. I liked the show enough, but I wasn't like obsessed with it like a lot of people. So I'm just like, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm really intrigued to see what the proper Game of Thrones fans think of this and if they're actually going to be tuning in or if they're that burnt that they can't be asked.
It's like weird that like in some ways though it doesn't feel like are they proper Game of Thrones fans? There's obviously the people who read the books and everything like that and of waiting patiently for like the sequel books etc. But then in terms of like the actual like fans of the series, those very much felt like people who just watched the series kind of thing. It never seemed like a Lord of the Rings thing of like people who loved Lord of the Rings watched the adaptations were like, oh my God, my dreams have come true kind of thing. Whereas it just seemed that like everyone who like got on board with Game of Thrones were just like general TV watchers, and I just felt because all of them were then so burned and pissed off by what happened, I just don't really see much of an appetite for this. And one thing I just wanted to mention as well was my biggest problem with this, and I think is probably really bad on the type of like being burned aspect of it, is that most people's problem was with the development of Daenerys and how her story ended and how that entire final, few episodes went and how they tried to bring in like the Mad Queen stuff and all of this. So then to like almost be reminded of that straight away by going like, hey, this is how the Targaryens started. And I'm like, whoa, don't like remind me of that. Like, I think at one point they said that like House of the Dragon and it was like some sort of series about like the First Men or something was being...
Yeah, that got cancelled.
Yeah, and I would have preferred that one over this. Not in the sense of like, if you would... Say we were there at the end of season 6, I would have been like, yeah, sure, Targaryens, awesome. But to do it now after like ruining the characters and the family essentially by saying like, oh yeah, they all just die off anyway because they all succumb to madness. It's like, well, what's the point? Why do we need to see that? It's not like Star Wars, like, oh, well, how did the Jedi, like we know that the Jedi all become extinct, but how did they become extinct? What led them to that? All of this kind of stuff. There's nothing like that, which I feel with this story. If you were going back even further back to like the old days, then maybe with the Targaryens, and that's why I think it was more interesting with the First Men. But to me, this just seems then too much of like poking the scar of being like, yeah, this Targaryens, we know we messed them up, but remember that blonde hair? Remember that stupid moment in which she made that stupid face and she went and burned everything for no reason? Like, we're going to show you another character which looks exactly the same as them. Because it almost feels as if I'm seeing like the stories of like her brother or something. It's like, as in the brother we saw in the series, not like her relatives and stuff.
Oof, we're getting Dave revved up for the main story. Like
I've been on the internet since 2007 when Spider-Man 3 came out. So yeah, I've been revved up.
Yeah. Tom, anything else you want to say about this?
I honestly, I feel like Dave has like summed it up perfectly there. Like, I too would have so much preferred. I would have liked this Targaryen series maybe a bit down the line, but I was more interested in that like series on the First Men. That definitely piqued my interest a lot more. There was so much you could have done with that.
Would you have preferred what's that book, like something an egg?
Duncan
Egg, yeah. Like, should they have done that?
That's one I've not actually read, I think.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe.
I just always think of the old Maester when he's dying. He's like, egg. heck?
Basically, whenever they announce any Game of Thrones projects now, I'm just going to be like, all right, is this something that George has finished writing about? Yes. Okay, then you can do it. Has he finished writing about this? No. Don't do it. Don't do it. Give it a few more years. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Any final thoughts from you two, or should we move on to the main story?
Well, my final thought is that I was thinking about rewatching the show, Game of Thrones, and I was like, I'm going to stop after season 6,
Yeah,
I think.
I was about to say.
And just think, you know what? Very much like the books, that ending will come at some point.
It's a happy ending that way. Daenerys is on her way to Westeros, and you can be like, yeah, I can imagine my own ending.
I'll finish that story in the books.
Or even you watch up until the moment Jon Snow gets like stabbed and killed, and then you stop there. That's where you stop.
Yeah, but then you just like you're just pissed off at Ollie for the rest of your life then.
Yeah, no.
It's better than being pissed off at literally every other character.
So yeah, that's it then. We'll go take a quick break and we'll get into our main story.
Lady, we should be out there snacking on bad guys. I am a predator. I need to be free.
You have got to get control of your aggression, or you will get hauled off into Area 51. You live in my body. You live by my rules.
I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please let me fix it so I can play it again. You are a loser.
Okay, and we're back, and we're here to discuss our main story, and that is Venom, Let There Be Carnage, pulls in $90 fucking million in the biggest weekend since the pandemic started. Now, this is absolutely insane. So, it defied the even most extravagant projections. Like, they were projecting it to earn maybe 40, 50 million on its opening weekend. In the US, it has yet to come out internationally. And this is such a large haul that we got a little salty statement from the Sony chairman, Tom Rothman, who said, "We are pleased that patience and theatrical exclusivity have been rewarded with record results. With apologies to Mr. Twain, the death of movies has been greatly exaggerated." So the 90.1 million opening weekend is the second best opening weekend in October, behind Joker, which had 96.2 million in 2019, and it is just ahead of Black Widow's second highest pandemic haul of 80.8 million in its opening weekend. So a huge opening weekend for this film, a film that all three of us have been like, we're not particularly looking forward to watching this one. Doesn't seem like our jam. The critics have seen it. We're getting, I would say, mixed, negative. Some people are loving it as well. It's a very mixed bag overall about what this film is being received at. But it's pulled in this crazy number. And I have to say, it pains me to say it, I think. But I'm with Sony on this one. I think out of all the studios during the pandemic, even though they've delayed Bond like 5 million times, I think they've stuck to their guns and they've gone, no, all our films deserve a theatrical experience and we will wait for those films to have that theatrical experience. And by the looks of it, it seems to have worked for them. Because not only this film with 90 million, No Time to Die has come out to an astronomical 119 million internationally in its opening weekend, which is absolutely insane. So I think it's working from Sony's perspective, committing to the theatrical experience and holding on to these films, not putting them on streaming. Having said that, I did not expect this numbers to be coming out from Let There Be Carnage, a sequel to a film that already did very well. You know, I think it did about 88 million, something like that, 88 million in its opening weekend. So I did not think the sequel would do better. I did not know the buzz for this film was as hyped as we thought it was, but here we are. I go to you, Dave. What do you make of all this, and do you think Sony made the right decision through all this?
Yeah, I think the Sony element is interesting. Obviously, like you said, I'm going to agree with them. And yeah, I think in any situation, I'm not going to say like, oh, you should have put it on streaming or anything like that. I'm always going to sort of champion when the cinemas are doing well and saying about why this is a good sign for theatrical releases being still relevant. But we also need like a small film to come out and do well to justify that point. It can't always just be this mega superhero blockbuster. We need something like even Dune, you know, like if Dune comes out, you know, it's a new franchise, that will be the big one to celebrate. So fingers crossed for that. But also I think that Sony is in a lot different a position, I think, than the other studios were. And as I've said before, you know, one, I think in terms of a studio, they're just nowhere near the sort of heights of Warner Brothers and Disney. You know, they're not there like Disney and Warner Brothers were in, you know, they had a slate of like 5 massive franchise movies coming up. They were quite lucky in the sense that a lot of the films that they had, because I don't really see Bond as like an actual Sony movie because it's obviously more of a distribution sort of deal. So in terms of talking about things like Let There Be Carnage and Ghostbusters and Morbius, then I think that they weren't really project, you know, one like Venom, we hadn't seen anything about that until the pandemic. Ghostbusters was, again, like people have been waiting for a third Ghostbusters film for like decades. So, you know, what was another like year or a few months? And there was still an element of like, oh, you know, I don't know. It's, you know, it's still somewhat new. It's a reboot. So it's not like a sequel in which people are like, oh, I need to see this now. You know, I need to see this unfinished Black Widow story, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But also a lot of these projects, you know, aren't ones of diversity either, you know, and unfortunately for all, you know, Disney and Warner Brothers hedge their bets a lot on very like risky projects with diversity at the forefront. And I'm not to say they you know, they shouldn't have done that or anything, but the timing was just difficult because, you know, they had a lot of female-led films we've seen with, you know, Shang-Chi, etc. Even with Eternals coming up, they're all projects that have got a lot of like big ethnic and diverse casts. And I think then if Eternals, you know, I would say might come out somewhere near Shang-Chi's like opening and might do lower than what Venom Let There Be Carnage is. And that's not to say that that appetite is not there and you shouldn't make projects like that, but it's just unfortunately Sony is there with a film with like 2 white guys who are like 2 leading men. And I think the Ali Plum, the film critic for Radio 1, put this best. You know, he said it's, you know, a film with like gloopy, sludgy CGI, which is a swift 90 minutes and is catered mainly to teenagers. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, that kind of sums it up, because Venom has always kind of been that project. We mentioned Joker, and not to say that Joker is on the same like quality level, but the same appeal is there. It's still a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, Joker, you know, like it's going to be violent. There's still that appeal from them. Mortal Kombat was one of the biggest successes in terms of like watches on HBO Max. So it kind of makes sense that there is this big crowd out there of like younger audiences which are kind of into this more like silly, violent content that would show up, which might not show up for those more diverse projects. So I think it makes sense from that point of view. And I think that, yeah, while I might have thought it would have maybe taken about 60, 70 million, at the end of the day, the first Venom film did take whatever, 700, 800 million, which was bizarre and crazy as it is. So, you know, it has got precedent for being a success. And, you know, I don't know, I'm not going to say it doesn't deserve it, you know, because again, like I said, I'm going to celebrate the success of cinema, but that's why I think Ali Plum was so spot on. You know, I look at this and go like, you know, that doesn't look like my type of film, doesn't look like I'm going to enjoy it at all. But again, it's not like I've always like hated on things like the Fast and Furious franchise. It's just that I'm like, yeah, that's not my jam, you know, but I'm not there like scolding it for being like one of the biggest earning movies of the year. So, you know, it'd be a similar situation with this one, I think. So fair play to them. Like he said, it shows that appetite is out there, but I think just studios need to be a bit realistic of being like, yeah, this, you know, this shows that like everyone's back in, like this all put all these projects back out there again. It, you know, it depends on the project. You shouldn't then put out Eternals expecting possibly 120 million box office opening. To go back to James Bond, I've never seen so much coverage of a film from the BBC in my entire life. The BBC has been like, I've never seen them like gush over a film like so much, like Bond all the time. If only they had done that to like a film which, you know, had like an Asian lead in it. But so I think that's why it's very different when we're looking at these projects. And I don't think studios should look at this and just go like, yeah, this is going to do 120 million. It's like, why is that doing 90 million? So very good. Keep putting films out theatrically. Keep doing it in this way. Stop doing this like hybrid thing. Stop doing this like on streaming, but also in theaters kind of thing. Just do it this way. It shows that the money is there. But it isn't like testament that this is going to make every film a success now.
No. Yeah, I would agree with that. Tom, what do you make of all this? And do you have anything to say about Tom Rothman's salty comments?
I mean, see, like, as you guys both said, we've kind of not spoken wholly positive about Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage on the show. I initially had some excitement for it because Carnage was there, and I just remember that first trailer coming out, and it just killed my hype for it completely. No trailer has ever killed my hype for a film so quickly as that one. And I had convinced myself that, like, look, it's going to be a successful film because Venom is an incredibly popular character, and the first film, as you said, inexplicably made over 800 million. But to see it make 90 fucking million, I'm happy. Like, it's weird because, like, I'm happy because, like, it's a good boost to cinema. Shows that Sony made, like, the right choice in this regard, and it could set a good precedent going forward. But why did it have to be this film? This film, which is like, I've been to the cinema so many times recently, and my mates have gotten a good laugh out of the fact that every time the Venom trailer comes on, they can hear me just whisper to myself, this fucking movie. It's just following me around everywhere. I know I'm going to have to review it, and I mean, hey, I could watch it, and I could love it, and it could be amazing, and who knows, you know, maybe I'll put out a public apology and we can all shut up about it forever. But overall, it is very good that it has made this money, that it is showing that cinema can still survive. But as Dave said, we do need to see it for a film like Dune, or even like some other smaller, newer film, just to make sure that it isn't, you know, we're not just seeing these like big tentpole, huge franchise movies all the time.
I would say I want to see Last Night in Soho do very well. That's the one.
Yes, yes. I'm excited for that one, and I want that.
I was going to say something like The French Dispatch, something which is just left field, which would do well.
Yeah. As for Mr. Rothman's comments, I love them. He is a great man. I love him. He's my new favorite chairman. If one can have such a thing. But yeah, I think he's right. The death of movies has been greatly exaggerated. I know we were having a panic. Well, we weren't. I think the three of us, we were all quite optimistic generally. But, you know, there were some worrying signs. So to see everything bounce back quite well with No Time to Die, Shang-Chi, and now Venom, hopefully this is a trend that can continue. And we're back.
People have been predicting the death of cinema since the television was invented. You know what I mean? Yeah. Then VHS, they were like, oh, that's it. They're all going to be watching movies at home now.
And then Betamax.
And then, well, and the rest is history. And here we are still. Even with hundreds and hundreds of hours on streaming, we're still going to the cinemas to see, for some reason, two big, slimy white dudes beat each other to death. So, but hey, it's good for cinema and it's good for Sony. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if this film also has legs. Because that's also, you know...
Well, they're symbiotes, so I'm sure they can make as many legs as they want.
Yeah, okay. No, I think, because obviously it's got a good opening, but... I mean, what do you guys make of the early reactions and the reviews coming out? You know, it seems to be another one of those... You know, dare I lump it in with, like, the Fast and... Like you, Dave, you said the Fast and Furious. I would also say, like, the Transformers sort of films where... They are like these big, dumb Hollywood fighting monsters things film that know exactly what they are and nobody really cares about the story. But people are enjoying that. Do you think it's along those lines?
I think maybe. I mean,
But then, like, are we ruining maybe some certain critique of cinema? And this is someone who does enjoy the Fast and the Furious films, but I'll be like...
Yeah, but then are the Fast and Furious films, like, rinsed in, like, reviews? Not really. I think that a lot of reviewers will see it as their job to kind of, like, because at the end of the day, they don't want to alienate readers either, even though there might be a lot of people out there, I'm doing the hands again, which might be, which might say, like, oh, well, you know, like, if, you know, film critics don't say what any of us think, but they do look at what people are saying about certain things. At the end of the day, if somebody is there and they're into their Wes Anderson and they're a film reviewer and they have to go watch, you know, the latest How to Train Your Dragon, they're going to be like, this isn't made for me. How, you know, what audience is this for? And let's look into, you know, like, what's the expectations? What do people like from the first two films, etc.? Okay, yep, seems to be doing more like a lot of the audience, the fans want. They did that a lot with Star Wars. You know, you see, even though The Last Jedi, obviously, you know, the response was very mixed, you can just see from the critics' reviews that they very much expected it to be like highly praised, because off the back, not to say that they would have like rinsed in the way that the fans would have if they were telling the truth or anything, but you can just tell the way that, like, because it had a higher rating than The Force Awakens, that they kind of were like, okay, we know what they want, and like, oh, this is giving fans everything that they want, what Star Wars fans want. And then they went, oh, apparently they did not.
Apparently not.
So then when it comes to things like Solo and Rise of Skywalker, they changed tact a bit in terms of how they approached it. And I think it's the same here, that they don't want to rile people up. They don't want to have like loads of teenagers like attacking them on the internet. And like you said, Jake, it's that element of like, you know what you're in for. I think something like Transformers is a bit different, because I don't think viewers of Transformers would necessarily read the reviews, but I think some people would necessarily look at the reviews for something like Fast and Furious potentially, and they don't want to upset people, and they know what it is. They know it is just dumb action and it's ridiculous. There's no, you know, there's no going around it with the Michael Bay stuff. You kind of just have to be like, this is shite and like it has a bad review. Fast and Furious, you could still somewhat be like, okay, it's silly, but like I'll give it a positive review because it knows it's silly. Whereas, you know, the Michael Bay films are just garbage. But
yeah, you don't go to them for nuance, do you?
But I think that it's the same here. I think it's just that they're like, right, what the fans of this Venom franchise like? What did they like with the first one? And it's very much the same thing I've been complaining about recently as well, which is the whole like, here is my short synopsis of what this film is for Twitter. I think that Act 1 was really good. In Act 2, this happened. In Act 3, and I also like this. The performances. This is not a fucking review. What are you doing, man? But this is what's happening. So yeah, I was building up to that when I was getting revved from the internet. But they have essentially, I think, also bolstered the reviews for this. People saying, oh, it's a mixed response. I'm like, it wouldn't have had a mixed response if half of those reviewers weren't scared shitless about getting knocked off of Twitter or Rotten Tomatoes because they were posting a full review on Twitter. Rant over.
Yes. I can assure you, listeners, Dave won't be scared shitless to tell his thoughts about Venom Let There Be Carnage.
If you want to see my thoughts on it, go on my letterbox and click the film, where you don't see it on a feed, you choose to see it, where you go, oh, what's Dave's thoughts on this? I will click on that film and look, not just there scrolling through your timeline.
Or you can listen to our review of
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Say,
you've made a conscious
have
decision.
a better time and listen to us and listen to Dave go on for 90 minutes.
We're gonna get him
this film.
drunk beforehand.
He's gonna.
But
he's gonna
would
get
these
him
people
drunk.
would these people want to come out of Venom 2 and just have me in their face? Like, I thought it was really good, and I thought it was no, they wouldn't. Like, they would prefer to go home, click on our podcast, and then listen to me talk about it at their leisure, not just have it come up when they're wanting to enjoy some memes.
So anything else we want to say about Venom Let There Be Carnage? That's going to be coming out in 2 weeks for us, and then we'll be reviewing it. That's 15th of October in the UK. So yeah, we got plenty more reviews to be reading, Dave, before we actually get to see the film. Is that going to hinder your viewing even more? The fact that people have said they like Act 1 and all this about Act 2 and 3 or whatever?
Well, to be fair, I don't like actually read through these things because that would be kind of a bit, yeah, wouldn't make sense for me to be like complaining about these and actually read the full thing. So it's more that I see it and then go like, oh, and like look away. But no, it's the same as anything, I suppose. You know, like I'm not there like opening night of every single film, so I'm always going to hear things. So I usually just go in blank slate, fresh mind as much as I could, you know. Even with a Marvel film, isn't it? Like there's obviously press screenings and it'll be like, this is rated 90% before it's even in the cinemas. So
I'm going to be trying to dodge spoilers like a fucking landmine. Just because like I've already seen so many people big up the post-credit scene.
Oh,
so
yeah,
now
yeah.
that's already on my fucking mind. Like, what could it be?
I mean, I've said it before. The only thing I think that can really shock me is that it's actually like Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
I already thought that, so I'm not sure if that would then shock me because I've thought of it.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean. But I'm still a bit like, no, they're not gonna do that. It's like it's very much like Luke Skywalker in the end of Mandalorian season 2. Like it made total sense for Luke Skywalker to be there, but you were still a bit like, are they? No, they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. I'm similar to that with Spider-Man. Like it makes sense maybe for him to pop up, but I'm just like.
I would just see it as predictable and just like my worst fears has been realized in terms of the, you know, this Sony Spider-Verse or Worlds of Spidey or whatever they want to call it. But no, I would much, the only thing that would give me like respect for this film and would actually make me excited for like a post-credit scene, I can't think of any other like reason I would be, apart from if Topher Grace just turns up and he's just like, hey Eddie, let's go have some fun. What's up?
That would admittedly be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Or Doctor Strange.
I was actually thinking this.
No. Literally,
This was actually a theory I had. Like, imagine if he needs his help and that's like the big shock is the Venom's going to be in Multiverse of Madness.
No,
you thought he'd come.
No, we don't want to taint the MCU. We don't like if this looks so bad. We don't want to be tainting Marvel with any of this. So that's why I'm not in support of any of this.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't want it to happen. I'm just saying it's a big possibility. It could.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying what would make me happy and excited, and none of that would. I would just be like, no, don't do this. So the only thing that would make me happy is if they just kind of go like, yeah, there's a Spider-Verse in which Topher Grace and
What's the guy who voices him on the animated show?
yeah, like they're just all in the same universe.
Yeah.
Or maybe they throw us a real curveball and it's it's Luke Skywalker. That's the cameo. It's just Luke Skywalker. He just shows up, slices like Null in half, and it's just like, why are you here?
Full Uncanny Valley and all of that.
Yeah, they just bring in Tobey Maguire. Just like have him be full, yeah, Spidey 3. Just be like
doing the dance.
You know, just be like.
That's what I'm saying. But like they could show a Spider-Man at the end, but it might not be Tom Holland. They could show either Andrew Garfield or possibly even Tobey Maguire. I realize I keep saying,
but
like,
not
Spider-Man,
Tobey
like
Maguire in the MCU. Tobey Maguire, just Tobey Maguire from some Sony Spider-Man films. Nothing to do with the MCU. Just
maybe
because
it's Tobey Maguire from Seabiscuit.
Yeah.
Or we all want it to be Rent.
Yes.
Come on.
Ditkovich.
Just have Toby come in and just like the scene with, you know, like Goblin Jr., like, you gonna cry? Just have him come in and say that to Venom.
I'm going to be so annoyed if it's something stupid like, oh, there's Jared Leto as Morbius.
Probably.
No, I tell you what it's going to be, and this is my final one. What it's going to be is like a post-credit scene where it's just like, it's basically Eddie like sat on the couch. Venom's like, oh man, I'm hungry. They order pizza. Pizza man comes. He opens the door. Pizza! And then we were just like, oh my god. It's like, yeah.
Or one that could be just equally as terrible as the first one. Like, because let's remember, like, the first film, the first Venom, that Carnage scene is and always will be one of the worst end credit scenes ever put to man. So if we try and match that with a project that we know that's coming up in the future, maybe Venom or Tom Hardy is just randomly walking along, sees a circus is in town. He's like, oh yeah, I'll go watch the circus. And then walks in and maybe he watches a show. Then he like goes backstage to go see some person who was like taming the lions or the tigers. And then we get Aaron Taylor Johnson turn around in an equally dodgy wig with some sort of like fake like hair on his chest and like a really like vivid like Flintstones kind of leopard skin costume. And he's just like, I knew you would be coming eventually or something like that. And then it would be
No. He turns around and he goes, you didn't see that coming?
Fantastic.
Oh, that would be amazing. Right, well, we'll soon find out in a couple of weeks. So, we're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll go into our weekly pull list.
Well, after X-Men hit at the box office, all the studios started buying up every comic property they could get their dirty little hands on.
Okay, and now it's time for everyone's favourite segment that I don't at all hold them hostage for. It's the weekly pull list. So, got some interesting picks this week. I've actually only got one pick coming from DC. It's been a bit of a slow week in comparison to last week, where there were so many comics coming out. We kept forgetting to put some in. I still maintain you should all go read Inferno. Please tell me you didn't miss me say that. But yeah, we'll start with Marvel. So we got a couple of interesting picks. We've got Dark Ages issue 2 is coming out. That's the new series from Tom Taylor. The whole of the Marvel world has gone dark. It's a very grim time. People have died. There's some awesome new suits coming out. But yeah, it's been a very good series. Definitely pick it up if you haven't picked up issue 1. It's only going to be a limited run, so it shouldn't burn a hole in your pocket too much to pick up the whole series once it's out. But Tom Taylor always delivers, especially when he gets to just play around with these alternate universes. So definitely be checking that out. And then staying with Marvel, we've got issue 1 of Eternals Celestia. So obviously we've got the Eternals film coming up, so we've got to build up the hype train for them. And shit's getting real. We're looking at some real high concept sci-fi shit coming from this series. We're talking like Celestials, gods, the Eternals themselves. It's going to be something that you want to be paying attention to. The artwork for it looks gorgeous. So you should want to pick it up on that basis alone. It'll look nice on your shelves. Going over to DC then, my one pick there, it's a very important pick, and that's the 80th anniversary of Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman being obviously one of the most important DC characters, one of my favorite DC characters. So I'll definitely be picking this up. I do love when we get these big oversized anniversary issues, and we've been getting a lot of them recently. So definitely check this one out. If you've never read a Wonder Woman comic, or if you've read loads of them, check it out. Learn to love the character, or fall back in love with the character, and show some support there. And then going over to IDW, we got Star Wars The High Republic Adventures, issue 9. If you've been keeping up with the High Republic stuff, it has been getting pretty tasty. High Republic Adventures has been a very good series to read, so maybe pick up some back issues on that. And maybe pick up some of the other High Republic stuff as well. The books by Charles Soule have been really, really good. I'm looking forward to more of them in the future. And then I'm going for a bit of a wild card for my last pick, and that's Vault Comics' Money Shot, issue 15. If you just want a series that's just completely crazy, fun, and a little bit cheeky, it's definitely not suited for kids, pick this one up. It's as I said, it's just fun, charming, and just batshit insane. Kind of dirty in places, but, you know, bit of fun there. So just reading over that whole list again, we got Dark Ages issue 2, we got Eternal Celestia, Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary Edition, Star Wars The High Republic Adventures issue 9, and Money Shot issue 15. And for my classic poll, I'm probably actually going to go for the George Perez Wonder Woman run coming out of Crisis on Infinite Earths, so that first post-Crisis run of Wonder Woman. All of his run, to be honest, I can't remember how many issues he did, but it's some of the best Wonder Woman work I've ever read. And it basically gives you everything you need to know about the character, and then some. If you don't love the character after reading that, then you have no soul, my friends. So guys, what do you think of the poll list? Anything you're picking up? Anything you want to add to it? They could be classic polls or new polls. This is a safe space.
Definitely going to be picking up Dark Ages 2. And because I really liked what's going on there. And obviously Wonder Woman on the 80th anniversary. I always pick up those big anniversary issues because I love them so much. But the Batman and Superman ones were great as well. And High Republic, I'll be definitely picking that up. as well, and then some others I'd like to probably always make a pull for my boy Batman. So he's got a new issue out this week as well. But yeah, that's my picks, I think, from the list. Good list.
Yeah, I'd say I'm glad to hear that High Republic is doing well, because as we were saying with Game of Thrones earlier, it's important to add your lore, put it plenty enough in the past or the future that it doesn't conflict too much with what you've already seen, and so I think they had a lot ride in on it going well to sort of potentially be used in the future. So I think what we've seen from the books, etc., sounds promising.
Really good, man. It's honestly, I think they're doing a fantastic job in it, because you've only read the first novel, is that right, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're doing a really good job, and I don't know if I want to see any like adaptations, maybe not adaptations, or like just TV or movies made in this world. I'm quite enjoying it on the publishing side for now, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think comics do seem to suit it quite a bit for me anyway, in terms of like books, because there's so much of that element of like, they've got this lightsaber, or they've got this unique look, they're this unique species, so at least you get to see a bit of that in artwork, etc. So it lends itself quite well to comics.
The only thing I'd also add as well is because the finale of What If is come out this week, I'm probably going to recommend the original What If comics. They all debut back in 1977 is when they first started publication of those. So I think the 13 different volumes of that. So if you can manage to pick them all up, that would be quite the collection.
I highly recommend What If Aunt May Became the Herald of Galactus. I'm not saying any more on that.
The first one is What If Spider-Man Joined the Fantastic Four? That's issue 1 of What If, which is an interesting one there.
Well, he has been a member of the Fantastic Four. He was part of a very brief Fantastic Four team that consisted of him, Wolverine as Patch Adams, Grey Hulk, Joe Fixit, and Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I'd be far more interested in what if Herbie the Robot took over from Johnny Storm full time, just for the entire legacy of the entire...
I would say, what if Herbie the Robot was Ultron?
Oh my god.
No, that would take away from Herbie's appeal. I think it needs to be like... what if Herbie was the leader of the Avengers or something like that? Just like...
What if Herbie got the Infinity Stones?
What if
Herbie committed...
What if everything happened in the Marvel Comics exactly as they already did, but Herbie was just there in the background being a cute little robot?
Like a robot, like the Watcher watching everything.
Yeah, just like that's the entire issue. It's just here, like they're like,
I can never interfere.
Herbie, what do we do in this situation? He's just like, I don't know. Thanks. That's all it is.
Invaluable.
But nothing is ever solved with fire because Johnny Storm isn't there because, rights issues.
Rights issues.
Well, that's just the story of Herbie the Robot. I love is the fact that he was in that cartoon they made like back in the 60s or something, because the Human Torch was in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So then they were like, Herbie the Robot is now the replacement for Johnny. It's like, what? They didn't go to the comics. They were like, what epic, awesome character could we choose? Well, like elemental, supernatural power character. No, we'll just choose this like little robot.
Which you bought a Funko Pop of.
Exactly. That's why I bought the Funko Pop. I saw it and I was like, this is meant to be.
I have to buy this. Awesome. Thanks for that pull list, Tom. Some great pulls there. So people go to your comic book stores and get these. And also thank you for listening to this episode. We appreciate people coming on board every week, listening to us speculate, discuss, and geek out. But if they want to continue the conversation, Dave, where can they do that, and what have you got coming up? Still more packing and moving?
Yeah, you can find me asleep currently. No. You can catch me over on Twitter where I'm throwing stuff out there occasionally, really long, detailed tweets, such as my reaction to the Game of Thrones trailer today. And just keep an eye out on things like Letterboxd and... my socials, just hopefully where I'll have some stuff up and running again soon once the move and everything is all completed.
Yeah, don't waste your time following him on Letterboxd. He hasn't posted anything since like Shang-Chi.
I've been like out of action, offline,
disconnected.
Yeah.
Tom, how about yourself?
Well, you can mostly find. I give my letterbox, but let's be honest, I barely use it as well. But you can find me on Twitter at Comic Book Shogun, where I'm constantly talking about The Wire at the moment, as it is the greatest TV show ever made, and I will continue tweeting about it until I've finished it again. But I'll throw in some occasional comic book chats in there. So yeah, that's really the best place to find me and argue with me. No one's argued with me yet. I actually find it insulting that no one finds my opinions divisive enough to argue with me. So
I think you're
damn shame.
You're gonna have to make a really controversial tweet. I think
Really controversial tweet,
like Batman sucks.
Just comment on something that is like great. Just start commenting on ones. Just
actually, just go into like a comment section or something and start a fight there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems the best way to go. Okay, that's how I'll get my kicks.
That's how you're going to do it. So I shan't be doing that, but you can also find me on Twitter at SweatyJake, and you can also find me on Letterboxd, where I'm much more active than these two, pulling all the films I watch and rating them. And as for the show, you can find and follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Cowls Masks. Facebook, unsure if you can follow us at the minute, but we'll see what.
What the hell's Facebook?
Not sure. Something of the past. And whether you use Anchor, Spotify, Apple, or Google, subscribe and follow us on there. And if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and a review, as it all helps us go up in the ranking. So thank you for listening. We'll see you all next week, where we will be doing our big spoiler review of What If. So stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Trot.